All right, shalom, shalom. So we are finally finishing up our study on patron and client relationships. And after this, prayerfully, we will move on to honor and shame. Honor and shame. So now we want to take a peek at patron and client. I'm sorry, patronage within the new community. Patronage within the new community. So remember last time we talked about Christianity and the word, I should say, Christian and Christianity, and that these early believers worshiped in a Jewish framework, and that the first individuals who were actually called Christians were Jews. We covered all of that. So we're just going to start off and read what's actually here. So the Christian mission depended on the financial support of its richer converts. Individuals might provide some important service or financial aid for the community and so be remembered honorably. Householders within the movement would host the meetings of the group and provide hospitality for missionaries and teachers. It's amazing that the early assemblies were in homes. So Paul sought to develop relationships of reciprocity between churches or assemblies so that what was it again? Beneficence. Beneficence between Christians might span the Mediterranean. The collection of relief funds for the churches of the assemblies in Judea is presented as an act of reciprocity for the spiritual benefits that went out from those Judean churches to the Gentiles. Similarly, Paul assures the Achaean churches or assemblies that their contributions to other assemblies or churches would establish ties of reciprocity for the future. Churches are to act as collectives of friends who share all things in common. Paul presents himself frequently as a partner or a friend who brings spiritual benefits and receives material support. But he is also conscious of his role as patron or father to the converts, since he has provided the gift of access to Yeshua that has saved them from God's wrath. Patronage within the church or assembly is not, however, meant to be pursued as a means of advancing one's own honor or power within the group. Acts of love and service towards one's fellow believers was the service enjoined upon the clients by the divine patron. Giving to fellow believers is presented as a reflection of Messiah's own act on our behalf. And Paul presents giving as itself a spiritual gift. Patrons within the assembly are acting as stewards of God's gifts. Christians are also urged to extend their own beneficence. I always mess that word up. One more time. Beneficence to the outside world, not only as a reflection of the generosity of God, but also as a sign that Christians or followers of Messiah too were honorable people who contributed to the welfare of all. All right, so here you can see all the sources that was used, some of the things that we went through, and also, you know, it's amazing how people come out of the church and they come into Torah movement, Hebrew roots, Messianic Judaism, whichever label that you want to apply, but they no longer want to give. And I think it comes from the way tithes may or may not have been taught or misused in their local assemblies at the time. But I don't understand how people expect the ministries to continue to run without someone giving. It takes time, money, and effort to do these things. So please, please donate to your local, wherever you fellowship. Donate to people that you know, that you've seen their walk, that you're able to reach out and talk to them, where you can email and ask questions and actually sure that they're actually walking the walk and not just talking the talk. Don't fellowship with a group and get fed there and then donate to others. That's If that's the case, go to the group that you're donating to, because the one where you're at, they need help running whatever that they are, whatever that they're trying to do to help the widows, the orphans, and the poor. all of those things. So think about that. Please give cheerfully to your local assembly or home fellowship or wherever it is that you're invested. There's one more thing I want to read from Honor, Patronage, Kinship, and Purity. And it picks up on page 136, which says an important facet of the New Testament message about God's, there it is again, beneficence is that while having kept faith with Israel, God now invites all people to stand in his favor, reconciled to God by God's own initiative. Recognition for God's inclusion of the Gentiles as Gentiles within the sphere of his favor was not easily won in the early assemblies or churches. But eventually, the church came to realize the breadth and scope of God's generosity in his new and gracious initiative. The specific gift of God in bestowing the Holy Spirit, even on Gentiles, was a decisive proof of God's acceptance of the non Jew into God's favor. The deeply personal experience of the Holy Spirit was understood as a gift from God that signified adoption into God's family, the fulfillment of the promises made to Abraham, the restoration of peace and favor with God, and a pledge of future benefits God has prepared and will confer at the return of Yeshua or after the believer's death. The vibrant and vital presence of the Spirit was thus an important assurance to the church of God's favor towards them, the assemblies. We come at last to what is surprising about God's grace. It is not that God gives freely and uncoerced. Every benefactor, in theory at least, did this. It is rather in the degree to which God's grace is unmerited and unconstrained that God's favor distinguishes itself. God goes far beyond the high water mark of generosity set by Seneca, which for virtuous people to consider even given to the ungrateful if they had resources to spare after benefiting the virtuous. All right. So I hope this sparked some thought and some interest to dig a little bit deeper into patron and client relationships to understand the New Testament, Brit Hadashah, or apostolic scriptures even more, to make it come more to life when you're reading it and adding some cultural context and background. Shalom, shalom.